The chandeliers of the Grand Wellington Ballroom glittered like suspended rain, every crystal droplet catching fire under the press of flashbulbs. The room pulsed with expensive laughter, champagne and ego mingling beneath the perfume of power. Emily Carter Hale stood where her husband placed her, 2 polite steps behind his spotlight. Jonathan Hale looked every inch the legend New York worshipped. His smile was tailor-made for cameras, his tuxedo a sculpted shell hiding cruelty polished to charm. "Smile," he murmured through a grin that never reached his eyes. "Try not to embarrass me tonight." Her practiced smile obeyed, stiff and thin as frost. Cameras exploded around them. Every white flash thudded like a memory she couldn't swallow. The whispers swelled almost immediately. "Poor thing," someone tittered. The sound of wealth pretending sympathy. "He barely looks at her. I heard he's with that PR executive, Olivia Grant. You've seen her? Red hair, perfect legs, the works." The words coiled around Emily's spine, cold serpents of gossip. She hid her trembling fingers behind a champagne flute, counting breaths. When the photographers turned away, Jonathan's hand fell from her waist as if she were a burden he'd carried long enough. He drifted through the crowd with effortless ownership, shaking hands, making promises, while she remained behind, decorative, irrelevant, nearly invisible. Then the room shifted. Heads turned. The orchestra stumbled on a note before catching itself. Olivia Grant arrived. She wore red like a weapon. The gown clung to her like confession, slit to the hip, glittering with the arrogance of someone who had already won. Her lips shone the same hue as the wine she would soon pour. Laughter, hers, spilled brighter than the chandeliers as she moved toward Jonathan. He smiled in a way he never did for cameras. Real, hungry, proud. Emily didn't move. She couldn't. She watched as his arm slipped easily around Olivia's waist, the gesture practiced, intimate, public. "Jonathan," Olivia purred, her voice designed for an audience. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your wife?" He turned lazily, eyes gleaming with amusement that tasted metallic. Yes," he said. "Olivia, this is Emily, my wife, my wife." The phrase landed like an insult, offered for pity, not pride. Olivia's scarlet lips curved. "Of course." She raised her glass, slow and deliberate. "A pleasure, Mrs. Hale." The moment stretched, cinematic, before the wine tilted, sliding down Emily's gown in slow crimson threads. Gasps cracked open around them. "Oops," Olivia murmured, unconvincing. Jonathan laughed first, sharp, cruel, contagious. "Honestly, Emily," he said loudly, "you should pay more attention. You've always been such a mess." The chorus of laughter followed his cue. Olivia fed on it, smiling wider. Jonathan's hand tightened possessively around her waist. Emily froze where she stood, heat rising through humiliation, heart hammering against the cage of silence. The red stain bloomed like an accusation across silver satin, reaching higher with every heartbeat. She met Jonathan's gaze and exhaled evenly. "Of course," she said softly. "You'd laugh." The mockery deepened. "At least you know your place." Her fingers trembled only once as she set her empty flute on a passing tray. Then, chin lifted, she turned and began walking through the corridor of whispers and glittering mock smiles. Behind her, Olivia giggled against Jonathan's shoulder. His low laugh followed, bouncing off marble, cruelly beautiful in its echo. The bathroom door closed behind her with a hollow click. Emily leaned on it, breathing the sterile air heavy with perfume and bleach. In the bright mirror, her reflection looked shattered and whole all at once. The stain down her front resembled a wound, a flower of crimson opening over her heart. For a moment the tears threatened. Then her hands flattened on the countertop, and her father's voice drifted through memory, calm and measured. "You're stronger than you think. Never let them define your worth." Jonathan's voice intruded, louder, crueler. "Without me, you're nothing." Something shifted. Her reflection straightened. The softness in her eyes cooled into glass. Her mouth formed the words barely above a whisper. "You think I'm powerless? You have no idea. It wasn't rage, it was resolve." Outside, the orchestra recovered. Laughter returned, brittle and rehearsed. The world kept spinning in champagne and arrogance. But when Emily stepped out of the restroom, she carried herself differently. Her stride was measured, her chin slightly raised. To the onlookers, she was a humiliated wife retreating into denial. But beneath the steadiness of that facade, something ancient and unstoppable had begun to turn. She passed Jonathan without pause. For a fraction of a second, her gaze lingered on the wall behind him, where the glowing logo read, "Hale Global Industries." The silver letters shimmered, proud and hollow, built on foundations he would never suspect she still owned. Because the empire carrying his name The one fueling his billion-dollar deal had been born from her father's fortune. Her inheritance, her blood, and soon enough, the man laughing loudest in that glittering room would learn this simple truth. The wife he mocked was the architect of his ruin. Under the chandeliers that night, the storm stayed silent. It waited, watching through her eyes, slow and steady, like ice forming under heat. She gathered every document into a neat pile, her movements precise. Her gaze flicked toward the framed wedding photo on the shelf. Jonathan's arm around her, both smiling. She stared at it for a moment before turning the frame face down. That night, she sat beneath a single lamp. The red-stained gown draped across the chair beside her like a ghost. Page after page of contracts lay spread out before her, highlighted, marked, studied. Every line she traced brought her closer to truth, to clarity, to purpose. She no longer saw herself as the humiliated wife in tabloids. She was the silent architect of the empire her husband thought he built alone. When dawn crept through the blinds, Emily was still awake, eyes steady, determination replacing exhaustion. The pain was gone, replaced by precision. She closed the final folder, whispering to the rising sun, "You used my name to build your world, Jonathan. Now I'll use it to take it back." Outside, the city roared to life, unaware that the woman they mocked yesterday had just begun writing the end of a billionaire. By mid-morning, the penthouse had emptied. Jonathan was off at Hale Global's headquarters, flaunting his brilliance to the world, and Olivia was somewhere basking in her reflected glow. Emily stood in the quiet aftermath, surrounded by marble and glass that suddenly felt like a cage. She packed the forged documents into a leather folder and slipped them into her tote, her hands steady now. Every move she made was deliberate, silent. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. She called a cab instead of taking the Bentley. She didn't want the driver Jonathan assigned reporting her whereabouts. The city buzzed around her, horns blaring, sunlight flashing off mirrored skyscrapers. Beneath that restless energy, Emily's mind raced through years of memories she had tried to bury. Her father, Henry Carter, had built Carter Engineering Group, a family-owned construction firm that specialized in major infrastructure. He'd been respected, fair, patient, shrewd. Jonathan had married Emily when Carter Engineering was already expanding fast. At the time, Jonathan was just a charming consultant with big dreams and polished manners. Her father had welcomed him like a son. She remembered Jonathan's promise after her father's heart attack. "I'll take care of everything, Em. You just rest. You've lost enough." She'd been grieving too hard to question what he meant. By the time she resurfaced months later, the company bore a new name, Hale Global Industries. Jonathan had said it was a necessary merger for tax purposes. She believed him. Now, walking up the stone steps to an old brick building on 58th Street, Emily realized just how deep his deception ran. A brass plate beside the door read, "Whitaker and Low Law Offices, her father's longtime legal counsel." She hadn't seen Mr. Whitaker since the funeral. Her pulse quickened as she stepped inside. The office smelled of paper and polished wood. Behind a large oak desk, an elderly man looked up, surprise flickering in his pale blue eyes. "Emily Carter," he said slowly, standing. "It's been years." Her throat tightened. "Mr. Whitaker, I need your help." He gestured to a chair. "Of course. What's this about?" She laid the forged contracts in front of him. He adjusted his glasses, eyes scanning line after line, his expression darkening. "Good Lord," he murmured. "These are your signatures?" She nodded. "They look like mine, but they're not." He leaned back, exhaling heavily. "Your husband forged your consent on every acquisition. Legally, these companies, these mergers, none of them hold if you choose to contest. Hale Global could collapse overnight." Emily's hands gripped the edge of the desk. "Then we'll make it collapse." He looked at her long and hard, perhaps surprised by the calm fire in her tone. "That's a dangerous game, Emily. He's powerful, connected." Her lips curved faintly. "So was my father, and Jonathan only learned from him." Whitaker studied her another moment, then nodded. "You'll need evidence, digital records, witnesses, financial trails, people inside Hale Global who know what's been going on." She stood, resolve radiating from her. "I'll find them." That night, in her apartment study, she scrolled through old contacts. Years of silence broke as she began to call people Jonathan had wronged. Former employees dismissed on false grounds, partners crushed by corporate takeovers, assistants threatened into signing NDAs. She spoke quietly, steadily. "He used my name. He stole from you too. I can prove it. Help me, and we can bring him down." Some hung up. Others listened. By midnight, 3 had agreed to meet. And a name stood out. Ethan Brooks, her childhood friend, and now a data analyst within Hale Global's finance department. When she called, his voice held shock and caution. "Emily, are you okay? After that gala, the media has been brutal. I'm fine, she said. But Ethan, I need your help. Jonathan's hiding something, offshore accounts, shell companies. I need everything you can find. There was a pause. Then you're serious. Dead serious? He sighed, then lowered his voice. You didn't hear this from me, but the company's books don't add up. I've seen fake charitable donations funneled into unknown accounts. If you're really going after him, I'll get you proof, but it's risky. Send it anonymously, she said. I'll protect you. He hesitated, then said, Your father would be proud, Em. Her throat tightened, but she didn't falter. The next morning, the first email arrived. Encrypted spreadsheets and bank trails leading to offshore laundering networks, charitable fronts, falsified transactions. She printed everything, stacking it beside the forged contracts. The evidence grew like a weapon being sharpened. By the week's end, more people had joined quietly. A former HR director Jonathan fired for whistleblowing. A project manager he scapegoated for embezzlement. Even a board member who'd been pushed out when he questioned the books. They all had one thing in common. They feared Jonathan, but they trusted Emily. At breakfast, Jonathan scrolled through his phone, laughing at an article about himself. Olivia, dressed in silk, leaned against him, glowing with borrowed power. Emily poured coffee for them, her movements smooth and silent. Jonathan looked at her over the rim of his cup. You seem awfully calm lately. Finally accepted reality? She smiled faintly. I suppose I have. He laughed, oblivious. Good. You'll thank me one day. Some people just aren't built for power. Emily set the coffee pot down. You might be right, she said softly. Some people aren't built for it. They steal it instead. He looked up half amused. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, she said sweetly. Just thinking out loud. When he left for the office, she stood by the window watching his car disappear into the morning traffic. Hair reflection looked back, steady, unreadable, dangerous. Jonathan Hale had no idea his empire was already crumbling, and the woman he thought was broken was now the one tightening the noose. The morning of the signing felt electric. The city hummed with anticipation. Financial channels blared predictions about Hale Global's $8.4 billion merger, calling it the deal that would redefine corporate history. Cameras gathered outside the glass skyscraper as Jonathan Hale arrived in his custom black Aston Martin, his arm draped around Olivia Grant. They looked unstoppable. Perfect smiles, flawless confidence, untouchable power. But deep inside the same building, the true owner of Hale Global walked silently through the marble halls in a tailored gray suit. Emily's hair was swept back, her posture sharp and steady. She carried a single envelope. No press, no entourage, no fanfare, only purpose. She had spent the last 3 weeks orchestrating every move, sending anonymous tips to key investors, filing legal injunctions sealed under her maiden name, preparing the evidence. Mr. Whitaker helped her notorize, and today it would all unfold. Jonathan stood before a long mahogany table surrounded by executives and investors. The skyline glittered behind him like the empire he believed he owned. Cameras flashed as champagne chilled in silver buckets, waiting for a toast. Gentlemen, he said, all charm and charisma, today we make history. As the signing began, the boardroom doors opened softly, heads turned. Emily walked in. The room fell silent. Jonathan blinked, disbelief flashing across his face. What the hell are you doing here? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the table and placed the sealed envelope before the lead investor, Mr. Carrington. I apologize for the interruption, she said evenly, her voice calm, but carrying authority. But before any documents are signed, you'll want to see this, Jonathan scoffed. Security. Carrington raised a hand. Wait, let's hear her out. Emily met his eyes. Inside that envelope is proof that every acquisition, every asset Hale Global owns was obtained through forged authorization under my name. Emily Carter Hale. I never signed any of them. Legally, every transaction tied to Hale Global is invalid. Proceeding with this deal will expose you to federal liability. The room froze. Jonathan's face drained of color. She's lying, he snapped. She's bitter, jealous. She'll say anything to ruin me. Carrington slid open the envelope. Inside were copies of contracts, matching forged signatures, notarized statements, and banking evidence connecting Jonathan to offshore accounts. He flipped through them insolence before looking up slowly, eyes cold. Jonathan, he said, these are serious accusations. If this is true, this deal is over. Jonathan's voice cracked. This is absurd. She's unstable. Emily tilted her head slightly. Am I? Olivia's voice cut through the tension, soft but trembling. Jonathan, is it true? He turned to her, desperate. Of course not. You know me. But Olivia had already seen the writing on the wall. She stepped back, pulling out her phone. I can't be a part of this. He grabbed her wrist. Don't you dare. She wrenched free. You told me everything was clean. Olivia. His voice boomed, but panic cracked it. Emily watched the chaos unfold with chilling calm. "I warned you once," she said softly, "never to underestimate quiet people." Carrington gathered the documents, rising. "The signing is postponed indefinitely. Until we sort this out, your accounts are frozen, Jonathan." "No, you can't." But the investors were already leaving, their silence speaking louder than any verdict. Jonathan's phone buzzed violently on the table. Notifications, alerts, headlines updating in real time. Hale Global fraud scandal exposed. Federal audit freezes 8.4B merger. Anonymous source reveals massive corporate forgery. He turned to Emily, fury and fear mingling in his eyes. "You did this to me." She stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "No, Jonathan, you did this to yourself. You built your empire on lies and you signed it all in my name." His breath came shallow. "You ruined me." Her eyes, steady and cold, didn't waver. "You ruined us years ago." This was just the truth catching up. As security escorted him out, Olivia followed the reporters outside, sobbing into her phone, denying involvement. Thiemann, who once commanded boardrooms, now shouted protests no one cared to hear. Inside, Emily gathered the scattered papers and tucked them neatly into her bag. Whitaker's assistant entered quietly, whispering, "The court just confirmed the freeze order. Mrs. Hale, you now hold controlling rights over Carter Engineering's parent assets. Technically, Hale Global is yours." For a long moment, Emily stood silent, absorbing the weight of those words. Then she nodded once. "Let's rebuild it the right way." That evening, the mansion that once glittered with Jonathan's arrogance stood dark and empty. Paparazzi crowded outside the gates, capturing the image of a fallen billionaire shouting at the intercom, "Emily, please just talk to me." From an upstairs window, she watched him, a shadow of the man who once told her she was nothing. His suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled, his voice breaking under desperation. He looked up, eyes pleading. "You can't do this to me." Her gaze was cool, detached. "You already did." She let the curtain fall. The next morning, the financial world woke to headlines that rewrote power itself. Emily Carter Hale takes control of Hale Global. From mocked wife to CEO, the woman who outplayed a billionaire. Inside the boardroom that used to echo with Jonathan's voice, Emily now stood at the head of the table. Executives waited, silent, uncertain. She rested her hands on the polished surface. Her expression calm and commanding. "This company," she began, "was built on deceit. That ends today. We rebuild with integrity, not intimidation." When the meeting adjourned, she paused at the glass wall overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered beneath her reflection, a reflection no longer meek or forgotten. Just strength, just clarity. The woman in the mirror wasn't the wife who endured humiliation at a gala. She was the storm that followed, the owner of the empire, the reckoning he never saw coming. Outside, reporters called her name. Cameras flashed. Emily Carter Hale smiled once faintly. "Let them watch," she whispered. "This time they'll remember who built it." And she walked forward into her future, into power, into peace earned drop by drop of red wine, humiliation, and fire. 2 weeks after the collapse, New York was still buzzing. Financial networks replayed Jonathan Hale's fall like a slow-motion tragedy. Commentators dissected every move, every forged signature, every moment that led to his ruin. Once a titan of industry, now facing federal fraud investigations. His wife, the true heir to the Carter empire, emerges as the most unexpected CEO in corporate history. Outside the courthouse, Jonathan was photographed leaving with hollow eyes and a lawyer at his side, his fortune frozen, his reputation in ashes. Olivia Grant had vanished into silence, her career vaporized overnight. And somewhere above all the noise, Emily Carter Hale finally found peace. It was a gray morning when she returned to her father's old office building in Queens, the modest brick structure where Carter Engineering had first begun. The walls smelled of old paper and faint sawdust, remnants of the days when men in hard hats and blueprints walked these halls. Mr. Whitaker met her at the door, cane tapping softly against the floor. "You sure you're ready for this, Emily?" She smiled gently. "I've been ready since the night he laughed at me." They stepped into her father's old office. The desk still stood in the same place, scarred by years of work and coffee rings. Sunlight streamed across a faded photograph. Her father shaking hands with a construction crew, smiling wide. Emily reached out, brushing dust from the frame. For the first time in years, her eyes filled, not with pain, but gratitude. "He always said this company would outlive him," she murmured. "He just didn't know how right he was." Whitaker nodded. "He'd be proud, you know. You didn't destroy what he built. You saved it." Emily looked around the room. Simple, grounded, nothing like the sterile glass empire Jonathan had erected. He believed in building things that last. "I want to do the same." Whitaker's eyes softened. "And Jonathan." She paused, her expression unreadable. He'll face justice. I don't need to see him punished. Losing everything he worshipped is punishment enough. Outside, the distant hum of the city drifted through the window. She walked to the old filing cabinet in the corner and opened the top drawer. Inside were her father's handwritten notes, plans, sketches, ideas he never got to finish. One in particular caught her eye. A design for a community housing project for widows and single mothers. He had written across the top in his neat, blocky handwriting. Build something that gives back. Emily smiled faintly, tracing the words. We'll finish this one, Dad. Back in Manhattan, her face now graced magazine covers. Forbes, The Times, Business Today. Not as a wife or an accessory, but as a headline. Emily Carter Hale, the woman who reclaimed her name. Yet she avoided interviews. She didn't want to gloat. She wanted to build. In her new office, a blend of glass and brick, old and new. She replaced every luxury Jonathan had installed with something meaningful. Her father's clock, a photograph of the first Carter engineering site, and one small reminder of the night it all began. On the shelf stood a wine glass half filled, not with red wine but with deep amber marbles, polished smooth. Beneath it was a plaque engraved with 4 words. Power remembers its source. Every time she looked at it, she remembered the laughter, the humiliation, the moment she could have shattered but didn't. It reminded her that silence can be sharper than vengeance, and that dignity once claimed never needs to scream. One afternoon, as the city sunset painted gold across her office, she stood at the window watching cranes build new structures below, the kind her father once dreamed of. Her assistant knocked lightly. Mrs. Hale, the board's ready for you. Emily turned, eyes calm, voice steady. Tell them I'll be right there. As she walked toward the door, she caught her reflection in the glass one last time. The woman staring back wasn't the trembling wife from the gala. She was the architect of her destiny, patient, powerful, unstoppable. And as the door closed behind her, the world that once mocked her name now waited for her next command.